where do we go from here? The 1-1 draw at home to Watford definitely felt more like a defeat, and even the most optimistic supporters amongst us must now surely be questioning whether this side can still survive this season in the Premier League. Of course, it's never over until it's over, but the facts are the facts. We have won one match in all competitions this season. It's unbelievable. We're in the middle of January, and this is as bad as any Newcastle United side has ever done up until this point. It's historically terrible by any metric you care to look at. But let's separate the positives from the negatives and answer some key questions that I think we all have on our minds. The most obvious question, at least in my eyes, is why can't this team win football matches? I think there are several answers to this question. It isn't really straightforward. Firstly, we simply don't score enough goals, and that is pretty obvious. For a team that has the likes of Sam Maximin, Callum Wilson, Joe Linton, even Almiron, the return of goals is poor. Just 20 in the league, which is one per match so far, and that is not good enough. And this statistic is very, very telling. We've only scored more than one goal in 4 matches this season, and we've won none of those games. The opening game against West Ham was a 4-2 defeat. There was a 2-2 draw against Southampton. Then there was the 3-2 defeat at the hands of Spurs, which was the new owner's first match in charge. And then, of course, a 3-3 draw with Brentford a few weeks later. And when we have taken the lead in a match, which hasn't been that often, we have never led by more than one goal. Our inability to get a second goal just keeps the pressure on us because, as the old saying goes, it only takes a second to score a goal, as we found out on Saturday. The other reason, and one that I've not heard many people talking about, is the deep-rooted psychological issue that must exist within our squad. It's not that these players aren't desperate to win. I believe that they are, and I believe that they're trying. But you can't just change ownership and bring a new manager in and expect all of those problems to disappear overnight. There was a culture of mediocrity at best at the club for far too long, and a lot of the current squad have played in that environment for years. They probably can't actually envisage winning very easily. I really think the work of a sports psychologist could actually be beneficial at this stage for the whole club. Maybe Eddie Howe has already done that, I don't know, but clearly there's something very, very wrong, and it isn't just a case of a lack of talent. And that leads me to the next question. What other players do we need to bring in? Trippier and Wood have already arrived and seem like very sensible signings in the circumstances, and I'm happy with both of them. People often point to the defence as the team's weakness, and as it concedes so many goals, and there's too many individual mistakes, and there is a lot of truth in those arguments. Some people point to the forward play and a lack of goals, and again, there is truth in that too. But for me, both of those issues would be helped massively by sorting the midfield out. Our real area of weakness is central midfield in my view, and arguably our wing play too. Howe must be given some new central midfielders of a higher standard than the likes of Shelvey and Longstaff, and even a new winger too, in my opinion. Sorting the midfield with the right players could simultaneously help the defence become more solid and the attack become more threatening. Games are won and lost in midfield, and ours is subpar for the Premier League, and it needs urgent upgrades, and has done for a few years. I just hope that this week we can sign 1 or 2 better quality midfield players. I mentioned the defence too, and of course we absolutely do need to buy a new centre-back who can command and lead. And finally, I kind of want to just see some players who can lead the team on the pitch. Trippier is doing this to some extent already, which is great to see, but when you look at our squad, who is actually leading, organising and standing up and leading by example? And leadership brings me on to the next question. Is Eddie Howe the right man for the job? I've seen a minority of fans questioning Eddie Howe and concluding that he's not up to the task. Personally, I don't agree with that point of view. I'm not going to sit here and claim Eddie Howe is perfect, and if we're being honest, I think we all would have hoped for a few more points from the new manager bounce that some teams get, which we haven't had when a new manager comes in. But that being said, things are better in some ways. We attack more and are fitter. We do have more possession even if we don't dominate games still, and the players clearly enjoy working with Howe and his coaching staff. But to write Howe off after a couple of months and managing a squad that is still not really his own is unfair. Ultimately, as mentioned earlier, there's deep-rooted problems in the club. A long-lasting hangover of the Ashley reign that will take a long time to correct. It could ultimately be our downfall that Ashley didn't leave the club in a strong enough position to actually survive once the plaster of his ownership had been pulled off. There really is little to gain from getting on Eddie Howe's case right now, in my opinion. Pointing out when he gets things wrong tactically or with team selection, fair enough, but deciding at this stage that he's the wrong man is really a sign of the times. We live in a world where we expect everything yesterday and want instant results in everything. And just because Howe hasn't come in, it hasn't quite worked out how we all want, some people are on his back already. And I just think that's unfair. For now, Eddie Howe has my backing, as I still believe in what he's trying to do. And even if we do get relegated, I won't hold him fully responsible for it. I think things will get brighter soon. I really believe that, even within this season. But whether or not it's too late to save us from relegation is still to be found out. But the fact is, the odds are not looking good on that front right now.